We live. Looks like we're live. What's happening, everybody? On a bit of a short show this evening. If you're new to the channel, thank you for stopping by. Appreciate it. Basically, a lot of Mopar car chat, stuff like that. Try to keep you a little bit entertained. Try to teach you something maybe you didn't know before. Also, for any of you guys that have contributed to the channel, absolutely wholeheartedly appreciate that. And for you guys that have given super thanks, I appreciate that too. Unfortunately, it doesn't always tell me when that happens. So, if you didn't get a response, sorry. I'm not told it happened. So anyway, thank you all very much. So with that, tonight, don't really have a monologue, not a lot to talk about. Typically, it'd be about this time where I would be talking about something, or just doing like the early business. Oh yeah, also too, if you're watching this and you're getting blown up with ads, give it a couple of days and come back. It just means that I've got to pull some of the ads out so that makes it watchable. Trust me, I'm right there with you guys. I don't like watching videos with a whole bunch of ads. I didn't even realize back in the day that YouTube added the advertisements through the course of the video. Come to find out, on live shows, you can end up getting blown up with those, like 20 ads or something like that. It's really annoying. So I always try to remember to remove those. And if you run into a video and I haven't pulled the ads, shoot a message down below saying, hey, we're getting blasted down here. That way I can get that fixed. So with that, not a whole lot to talk about on the Mopar front. Unfortunately, there's just nothing to be able to talk about because Dodge isn't giving us anything to talk about. So typically around this time, I'd be answering questions about camshafts, intake manifolds, which exhaust works best, what tuning software, things like that, what to use. If you're planning on getting into tuning your own stuff, that's always an option. Go for it. I think it's something that you should learn. You need to know a little bit about what you're messing with. And if you ever have the opportunity, learn how to tune your own stuff, and it can come in pretty handy if you decide to stick around for a while. But aside from that, I guess I could start to dive into, what are some of the top questions that I've been asked recently. A lot of it's been hinging around camshafts. Once again, camshafts are coming around. Guys asking a lot of questions about what's the best cam, what cam should you go with. Realistically speaking, there's nothing. Somebody's busted. There's nothing that is more ambiguous than that question when it comes to performance mods. The best cam is stock. Okay, so and as goofy as that might sound, consider this. Every dollar that you spend on one of these cars can be spent on a down payment for a car that's within the noise, in other words, in terms of the power window that you're trying to get to. So if you just want to stick around Mopar and you want to have something old school and cool, there really isn't a best off-the-shelf cam you need to go custom ground. And the custom grind, again, is going to be a very subjective thing because here's the thing. You can't just ask the question about camshafts. When I was working at the shop and developing the camshaft program for Pikes, one of the things that we had to do, both to our credit and to our detriment, was you've got to put camshafts together that are livable on the street. And the second you start putting raspy, just rowdy cams on the street, you start to run into problems. And those problems are the overinflated sense of romance that guys will put into the car and the way that it sounds. And you want that real lopey sound in cam. The reality is, if you want something lopey and just rowdy like that, you can get away with an LS with that setup, although it's going to want to, if you've done it right, spend about 73 or 7,500 RPM. Really, all of them will, now that I'm thinking about it, Hemis, LS, or otherwise. Or get you something old school with a carburetor where the chop of that cam actually can make some sense. So, again, it just makes it kind of tough. But camshafts, you got to deal with that on a one-on-one basis. It's a very subjective thing. There are guys that love lope. There's guys that can't stand it. And there's the reality, right? So that's usually where I try to begin the conversation and basically just kind of go from there. But let me get to you guys real quickly. Rome is in. What's up? Almost is in. What's up, Complex? What's up, buddy? I'm going to say, what are your thoughts on ghost cam tunes on Coyotes? We just did one on my 27 Mustang. They're actually kind of fun. So the trick with a Coyote, and this is something that the Boss Mustangs used to do, it's kind of a party trick you can have when you can adjust exhaust and intake low or intake valves independently because you have a cam for each each bank. And what you do basically to put together a ghost cam, and it's not honestly, it's ghost cam is actually kind of, I mean, it's not really the right name for it, mainly because, I mean, it's legit. I mean, you're not killing cylinders to make it sound like this. You're legitimately putting a profile on that cam. So the way that it works with the Coyote, factory Coyote specification has the LSA at about 121 or 123 degrees, which means that it's cracking the exhaust way early, shutting it super early, and you've got a very active intake runner. It makes for a very smooth idle. And coincidentally, the Hellcat and the 392 cams have a 121 lobe separation angle, to give you an idea. Very wide lobe separation angle. Well, the cool thing about Coyotes, and really anything with VVT, is that you can tighten up that lobe separation angle and retard that theoretical cam with an intake center line of like 110, and you are just absolutely hanging on to your duration on the intake side, or I should say on crankshaft duration on intake, to where you're just cracking that exhaust valve late, builds a ton of compression, but it tightens up the LSA and you get a ton of overlap. So that's how that works. And then you tip into the throttle, and the cam will separate slightly in advance, and you're back to having your variable cam shafts throughout the RPM range. And that's the cool thing about the Mustang. A lot of people don't realize that really is a significant, it just adds for a very flat, very broad power band with that 5.0. So one of the things that is neat, though, is that, just so you know, the way that you phase those cams is if you want to do a ghost cam, it'd be 106 rocked back to like a 110 or a 111 intake center line. And then at, say, 2500 RPM, you start to advance. Actually, a little bit earlier than that, about 1800 RPM, you start to advance it. And you drag the exhaust lobe, in terminology, you're dragging the exhaust lobe, in essence, spreading the intake center lines. And you'd end up with like a 112, 114 at, and 112, 114, and then you would advance it to about 3,500 RPM, start to widen it a little bit, because the wider the LSA, the more it'll help it carry power. So kind of fun stuff. It's pretty neat. Anyway, you end up with a LSA of like 118, 119, and you basically are spreading this nice gambit across this RPM range where you've advanced it tight, retarded it tight, started to broad it, and then it's just kind of a neat deal. And then kind of retard the cam a little bit more towards the big end. So really neat stuff on that. I think it's fun. That's it. I think nitrous is your best horsepower per dollar you can do, provided that it's done right. It can be rather expensive, and the thing is, if you've got a carbureted application, it really is super easy. And really, nitrous is fairly easy in concept. It's just making sure that you're spending money on the right controllers. For the multi-port fuel injected cars, you really want to run the triggers based off of you really want to run them based off of injector duty cycle, not necessarily throttle position. That's a little bit safer way to control it. You're on the throttle wide open, letting her rip, and at, say, after you've tested to find out what your max injector duty cycle is, then, and that would just mainly be it could be in pulse width. You can adjust it several different ways, but what you're going to do is you're going to trigger it at 80% of what that max duty cycle used is, and that works really well, and that's a real safe way to control it, basically. And I used to always like say, look, stick the golden rule for street nitrous setups. We're not talking about an engine that's built for street. Built for race use only. Huge mammoth rods and lots of the pistons in the hole. None of that kind of stuff. Just a normal street setup, right? So whatever 33% of your advertised crank horsepower, that would be the number that I would give you for. That's how much nitrous I would run as a max for a street setup. So if you've got, like say, a 400 horse Hemi pickup truck, I wouldn't run any more than about a $1.25 shot, if that makes any sense. Sovereign is in. What's up? Almost saying it's really neat, to be honest. It sounds nasty, but it drives like a stock car as soon as the RPM goes 100 over idle. Absolutely. It's fun, and it's one of the things that you can do. Or if you get sick of that after a while, you're like, this is getting on my nerves, press a button and you don't have to deal with the camshaft loping like that. But yet you still get all the benefits of having a true variable camshaft profile throughout your entire RPM range. Ryan's in. What's up, Mr. B? What's up, man? Thoughts on power adders to the 5.7 and the Rams? Recently got a 2020 Ram Rebel with the 5.7 e-torque. Fun motor. If you've been keeping up, we just had the Air Raid Junior kit. Is what I just got through doing quite a bit of testing with mine. It worked out pretty well. But as far as power adders go, I mean, it's gonna require the same type of fueling, and it's gonna be, I mean, it'll respond just fine to it. ProCharger makes a truck kit. Whipple makes a truck kit. For the trucks, I kind of like the ProCharger a little bit more. Main reason for that is, well, it doesn't load up the transmission as much. And with these trucks having HP 70 and HP 75s, there's a lot of weight and a lot of load that you've got to put up with those kits. So ProCharger is going to a little bit softer down low, where you don't really need a whole lot of extra power. You might think, well, I mean, I need all this extra power to get the thing going. Believe me when I tell you, it'll get through first gear like that. You don't need a positive displacement supercharger to get you going. Actually, you prefer to have the ProCharger a little bit softer off the line. My truck, especially when it's cool outside, has a problem with traction the way it came. So go with the ProCharger and probably be the route that I would take. It'll bump the thing up. It'll give you about another 120 horsepower. So a legit 520, 530 horse, somewhere right in that range at the flywheel. And it'll put you, in that 450, 460 range to the rear wheels, which is a fun place to be with those trucks. So, basically it kind of turns it into a solid mid 12-second truck, which makes it for a very fun truck. Plus, you don't lose any of the drivability that it had when it was stock. And another fun fact, the cam in the 5.7 comes from the factory with a tighter lobe separation angle than the 392 or the Hellcat does. And it's a 115 degree LSA, which is actually prime for a ProCharger, or I should say for a centrifugal supercharger. It helps to make power more in the mid range. So yeah, it's actually, it's kind of asking for a centrifugal supercharger when you think of it that way. Moto X is in. Hey, Brian. Hey, man. Rome's asking, what's the mileage limit where you stop considering further mods to be healthy? When you just draw the line before you ruin a good motor with some miles on it. I don't have a mileage restriction. I can tell you that, my mileage might be better or worse than yours. And it depends on how well the engine was taken care of. How was it used? What all was done to this thing previously? There's so many things that come into play here. But that being said, We put superchargers on cars with well over 150,000 miles on them and didn't have any issues whatsoever. These were guys that drove their cars a lot just on the highway, primarily weekend cars, but they were driving them a lot. They drove them every opportunity that they got. And so they were pampered. They just had a lot of, turns, spins on the wheel, if you will. But other than that, these things had compression like a brand new car. So you can't really base it off of mileage. You've got to take a look at the entire health of the automobile that you're working on and then make your decisions from there. So, I'll put it to you this way. I've seen 50 and 60,000 mile cars and trucks that look like they've got what you would perceive to be 250,000 miles on them. And then you've got vehicles like Buffy, who's got 188,000 miles on her, who literally runs better today than the day I picked her up with 30,000 miles on her. So doesn't burn any oil, doesn't do anything like that. So there's not really a mileage restriction. It's, again, just an overall health of the combination. And to be frank with you, you got to kind of get an idea for who the person is that's owned it too. If they're doing their own maintenance, they're staying on top of things, they're real hands-on, kind of itsy-bitsy, with everything. It's got to be just right. That guy or gal is going to be a real prime candidate. If you got some chucklehead coming in there that, really doesn't know a supercharger from a hairdryer and they're trying to figure out, I just want to penetrate it, dang right, you stop, power, you stop paying attention. So if you run into that type of a situation, that's when you just want to not even have the, you don't want to have the liability of dealing with that guy. So again, so in other words, God, how much longer can I make this answer, right? But that's the prime driver with that. I mean, it can be you just have to kind of, and that's with anybody, and that's with any, car that you're working on or anything like that. But if you've got a car that you've picked up or you're thinking about buying and the buyer, or I'm sorry, the seller, what you're buying, if it's a clean setup, don't sweat it. If you want, do a compression check a couple of pistons, check a couple of cylinders, make sure you don't have any leak down on one of the pistons or in one of the cylinders, and let it rip. Ryan saying, awesome, thank you for the info. Happy to. By the way, my eTorque with, if you haven't seen it, check out the air raid install video. Oh! And guys, listen, I'm really sorry. I could not have screwed up those videos any worse than I did. It was really only supposed to be one video. So the reason why there was a part 2 is because as I was heading to put the air raid filter in the truck and take the stock filters out, I freaking hit stop on the camera, and there's no going back after that. Once you hit stop, that's a wrap. That's a video. And so, because I don't do any editing, like I'll do pause editing, but everything I do is in real time. And it's real life. That's something else. If you're new to the channel, thank you again for stopping by. I do nothing but real life stuff. I don't do the editing. I don't snap, bang, but I don't do any of that. This is just me and you hanging out. It's really meant to be a long form podcast that is just a generic white noise generator type of a thing. It's just based on car stuff. And other stuff too is primarily car stuff. So, your favorite background, chatter type of thing, that's what it's for. So anyway, so I was going, I can't believe it. So I had to start that next video basically from scratch, and that the part 2 really is the air raid tube with the filter and everything else, and significant result for sure. But watch those if you've got some time to kill, and I go into some detail but not a whole lot in those videos. Then the other part of this is that I don't ever watch me. Like I don't ever just, throw on B Mason and see what I'm talking about. I mean, I was there for the original take, so I kind of know what I'm up to. But this is going to sound so weird, but there was the lost footage episode because I don't know what I did, but I screwed up about 3.5 minutes of content at the beginning of what would have been this entire one-shot video. So I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I just did that. So it was missing the air raid part number. It was missing the dyno chart that comes with it. It was missing a bunch of other stuff. And it was missing some commentary that I had. So I ended up filming the third video as kind of a makeup for me missing the first 3 minutes. Ended up being a longer video. So anyway, I hope y'all liked that. Y'all got a chance to hang out with me, go do a couple of ride-alongs. And it's me data logging this whole thing. And at the end of it, I do a wrap up, and basically it's, you know, the results speak for themselves. And the data, by the way, is clean on all of those hits. I mean, real clean. Looks good. Ghost is in and say, what's up, B? You finally picked up an 18 Charger Hellcat. Congratulations. Any suggestions to pick up a little more horsepower? Maybe up to like 700 wheel horsepower. All right, so now begins the Hellcat talk. All right, so Hellcat talk. As you guys know, I am the current record holder for stock boost 93 octane with this little girl right here. Okay, that car has run the quickest of a 1005, but it has run a string of 1008s in conditions where it really had no business running those numbers. So I know a thing or two about how to extract power out of a Hellcat and how to get one down the drag strip. Now, as far as how can I help you to get to 700 horsepower to the rear wheels? You are going to need to pulley it. There's not a quick fix to it. That no killer chiller is going to get you there. There is nothing that's going to get you there aside from a pulley. So here's what I would suggest you do before you do all of that. Put a new fuel pump in the car. You need one. Whether you know it or not, you need one. The fuel pumps that are in your car, or well, technically it's pumps, but the pump that is in your car right now is getting up there in years, and it will absolutely need to be replaced before you start doing anything else under the sun. And I know this because in data logging, my car, a 16, a 17, all of them needed fuel pumps. And it's just the way that it is. So before you do anything, you're going to put a new fuel pump in the car. It takes longer for me to get my tools together than it does for me to swap out pumps. They're underneath the back seat on the driver's side. You need a fuel pump tool, and I did a video that outlines all of this. So if you need that, go into my how-to section. It's somewhere in there. Now, after you put the new fuel pump in your car, here's what you're going to need to take a look at. First of all, there's no such thing as a no tune necessary pulley setup. There's none. Not one. It doesn't exist. Don't even pretend like it does. Again, I'm also the guy that saved at least 2 guys that I know of for a fact at the drag strip, and you could probably extend that to 2 other guys that I helped to talk out of keeping to make passes. So here's where you're at with this. You need tune, which means you're going to need an unlock. You're also going to need, for your car, you might need a smart cable, but you're going to need at least a 3.0 pulley, and you're going to want ID, injector dynamics 1050s, fuel injector connection, 127s, something along, what is in my face? Something along those lines. Because there's also no such thing as a pulley that also doesn't get injectors along with it. That's just the way that it is. Along with that, you're going to need to pin your crank. And now begins the question that nobody wants to answer, which is, do you ever want to make more power with this thing than just around 7 bills? Also, let's be honest with ourselves. Are we running 91 octane forever, 91/93? Because that is significantly going to dictate where you go with pulley choices. So there's some things to keep in mind here. Again, I only would recommend going with the parts that I know for a fact work well with a stock setup. 272 Hellraiser pulley sounds great, but I just would not run one with what could be considered sketchy fuel. and to kind of talk, let's talk about that for just a second. So I recently put up a video with Foxy where I'm adjusting the basically I'm adjusting a tune that I did to Foxy on the dyno. And in that video, I'm talking very candidly about the fact, look, I'm the one that put this tune together, and I know that it was perfectly safe when it was on the dyno. In fact, it was great. The dyno is loaded. It's a Mustang eddy current dyno, so I know it's working fine. But I don't drive the car that often. And because I don't drive the car that often, well, I've got a problem with octane. And, octane starts to degrade over time. And I've got to put a tune together that not only works well on a dyno in lab conditions, but it's got to be able to work in the real world as well. And I can tell you for certain that the car is making more power now that I've revised the tune on the street. But it's interesting to note that even when you think something is cool and everything's great on a dyno, it doesn't always translate to the street. So 700 horsepower might not be the number. 685 might really be the number. And you might, it's 685 is not as psychologically satisfying as 7 bills, but and it also depends on the dyno too. I'm used to Mustang dyno, eddy current dyno. Dyno jet will, obviously show a little bit higher. So, getting to 700 horsepower on a dyno jet is pretty easy. That's, if you tune it right, you can get there. So, there's that, but there's several different ways where you can get to a power number or a performance level. Just make sure that you're taking the right steps and you're doing things in the right way. Get a hold of the right people, and you'll make sure that your investment is safe long term. So hopefully that answers the question. I would say that the 3.0 or a 295 is about as aggressive as I would get with 93. And really 3.0 is as aggressive as I would go with a 91 octane tune. But again, injectors, you're going to need a new fuel pump. I can promise you this already. If it hadn't already been replaced, replace it. And top tip on that, run the thing practically out of gas before you try to do that pump, because it sits in even if it's just got the slightest amount of gas in it, it's going to come out of that thing. So just know that going into it. But anyway, hopefully that answers the question. Arvos, good evening, nerds. Nerds, I love it. Arvos, are long tubes on a 5.7 without throwing codes possible, or should I start cutting out some electrical tape to cover the check engine light? I don't think you would run into a code with long tubes on a 5.7, provided you're running cats. Although you may need cat simulators, even if you're running high flow cats, because you're going to want to run metal substrate cats, the 200 cell metal substrate cats. The 400 cell, but if it's only that big, there's not enough cells to flow air through them. That's why the stock converters are kind of big. They're about that big around, but they're 400 cell cats, which is just to say 400 cells per square inch. And you can just imagine the more square inches you have, the more flow you have. So that's why the stock cats flow a ton of air. It's because they got a whole lot of cells. So if you get metal substrate cats, you may still need to get sims. Some cars do need them, some cars don't. Kind of weird. But in that respect, you might be able to get away with something. Rome, talking about limits for power adders. Yeah, well, I always thought there was a limit. Thanks for perspective. No, absolutely. I'll put it to you like this. 188,000 miles, I'd put a Pro Charger on Buffy like that. Wouldn't even think twice about it. Dad saying I have a 2019 392 Daytona still stock. Went to Mexico and it had an SRT8 Challenger, I believe 6.1, play with me. And on a 50 mile an hour hit, he was door to door with me and was super quiet. Plate said pink slip. Nice. He had a little bit of work done to that. There's no way a 6.1 that's stock is going to roll with a 6.4. Ghost is saying, noted, thank you. Absolutely. So, and that's something else too to consider, guys. If you've got an NA platform, The rule of thumb works like this. If you've got any one of the new Hemis, 5 to 7 pounds of boost is not the limit. Okay. It's simply not. You can absolutely run more boost than that with those combinations. It's just ill-advised, mainly because of the weight of the vehicles. These things are heavy, and trying to throw a ton of boost at something that's already relatively heavy is not very good. You run into low-speed spark knock issues. So it's more fuel quality than anything else. You convert these things over to E85 and you'd be real surprised what you can get away with a 6.4. 5.7's a little bit different story. 5.7s will take boost a little bit easier, not because they're built better or anything like that. They just have a little bit lower static compression ratio. So there's that. And when you're dealing with engines that are port injected, it's you've got to think of these things a little bit more of an old school mentality. With the Mustang Coyote or anything that's got direct injection, it's a little bit different ball game, because you've got way better control of fueling and airflow on a direct injected engine. In other words, the fuel spraying, there is no fuel injector in the runner. So, you know, that can help some things in terms of helping to make power and to stave off any question of detonation. But again, 5.7 stuff, you add 5 or 6 pounds of boost to it, you pick up 100, really it's more like about 115 horsepower, and it's safe, it runs good, they're fun, and you can go from there. It's not going to be the last word in performance. I mean, if you're looking for something that's set to kill, I mean, believe me, and this is something else that I love to death, is when guys will absolutely hang their hat on, I want max effort. Like, no, you don't, dude. You don't want max effort, because you don't know what you're saying. That sounded either really healthy or really sick. Anyway, max effort doesn't exist. It just simply doesn't. I mean, okay, a max effort car is something along the lines of what Demonology's put together. I put the camshaft together for that combination, and I can tell you that even with that max effort scenario, you're still working within the confines of some limitations. So again, can you do more? You can always do more. And so you don't want to just, there's an inevitable slippery slope that guys get to, and they start sliding down that slope about the minute that they get walked on by something that they feel like they should have beaten, or, I've spent this money, my car should be faster. Look, get really comfortable with the idea of setting goals and meeting them, and then being happy that you met a goal. This isn't like a career for you. You don't have to keep working at this car. You've made it. You've built it. You've done it. Get out there and enjoy it and have fun with it. No, yeah, there's always somebody faster. But here's the problem. There's also always somebody that will just absolutely take this stuff personally and want to make an ass out of themselves. Let them. They've spent the money, and believe me, they've spent the money. They've paid the cover charge, if you will. The problem is that the piper also gets his toll on the back end. And believe me when I tell you, scattered blocks come really quickly to guys whose mouths and their wallets are out of control. So just know that coming into that scenario. I've seen it play out so many times that it is, at this stage of the game, it's predictable. It's almost like you're reading from a script. So don't be that guy. Build something that you know is going to be fun, and enjoy it. And take it from experience. And this is not it is kind of in a way my experience, but it's funny. I've got some pictures up here of like my old Mustang stuff, but that car went out of control, was way too overpowered. But take it from me, I can tell you that I've had to learn I've learned just by watching other people make some phenomenal mistakes and have seen these guys on the back end of the repercussions of some really bad decision-making processes that they put into these cars that are, I don't know, you almost think that they're getting into some kind of legacy building routine or something, which I get it. It's easy to get wrapped up and get down those rabbit holes. Red Dog, what's up? Can say I'm addicted to bracket racing with my Red Eye. Good car for bracket racing, by the way. Would a tune make the car more consistent? Yeah, we'll get into that. Or is it a losing battle where I should just get get a carbureted platform? So here's the thing. Your car is already super consistent the way it sits. There are if you are consistent with what you do with that car leading up to hitting the staging beams, then the car is going to remain consistent and it's going to do exactly what it did the run before over and over and over and over and over again. I love me some Red Eyes and Hellcats for their consistency. So there's that. I would not worry too much about trying to find another platform unless you just want something else to run in lieu of what you've got now. But in terms of consistency, no, if you are consistent, believe me when I tell you, that Red Eye will be, because if there's something that these Hellcat variants, the 392s, 57s are the same way. As witnessed when I was doing my intake testing, it literally went 1450 back to back. 1450 to the number. So they're very consistent, they're powerful, they're reliable, and that's the key factor here. These Mopars tend to be significantly more reliable long term. And we've seen that with the fleet trucks that we run. We've got trucks with 150, 200, 250,000 miles on them. These guys don't baby them, man. These guys, you'd think that they're paid more if they stick their foot on the floor, you know? So trust me, there's no love given. There's no mechanical sympathy going on here. So, but they're durable, and that's the beauty of it. So no, don't worry about that with the Red Eye. Oh, Ken saying he's got a killer chiller on it, or a chiller on it, which makes a huge difference in keeping the supercharger temps low. It can. You know, if it's hot outside, it can help a little bit with keeping the car running consistent numbers, or at least maybe a little bit lower. So yeah, that's a good deal for you there. Itches in. Red Dog saying no chuckleheads here. Saying hit the like button. Absolutely, yeah, hit like, guys. And if you're new, thanks for stopping by. Your favorite background noise generator at it once again. And really to that point, when it comes to drag racing these cars, one of the beauty of these Mopars is that they are overbuilt. I will say that if we're talking about the Hellcat variants, it's one of the reasons why I'm, you know, the happy owner of this car back behind me, Little Miss Revlon, has got hundreds of passes on her, has no business having the longevity that it's had, given the fact that it's run nothing but mid to low tens its entire life. So in fact, the car's got 20,000 miles on it, and I am not kidding when I tell you that all of those miles are driving to a drag strip, making a hit, and then coming home. That's it. So 2015 Hellcat, you do the math, there's a lot of miles on that car that were at wide open throttle at this stage of the game, cumulatively anyway. So, and it's one of the reasons why I made the move to the Hellcat over the 392. It's just that they are just that durable, and it really is worth it to talk about them in that way. Now, people say, they're heavy, talking about Dodges in general and the Hellcat variants and all that. Yeah, they are heavy, like a tank is heavy. They're built like one, and they take a beating where other cars don't. Let me remind you guys of this. You know, people will talk about, well, Yeah, the Mustang, twin turbo, super fast, does all this other stuff. That's right. They are wowzers fast. Right up until the point where they blow something up, which they all do. Sorry, guys, but that's just the way the game plays out. You cannot have your cake and eat it in this business. Unless you spend significant dollars, you're going to be looking at the wrong end of a tow truck sometime soon. That's why these Mopars are so great. Yeah, they get clowned on a little bit if you're talking about roll racing, but they shut people up pretty quickly when you put them on a drag strip. And secondly, they'll do it consistently and they'll do it over and over and over and over again. So there's that. Ask anybody that's been in and around this business for any real length of time, and you start off wanting all the power, you get to a point where you've got all the power and you're breaking stuff or blowing stuff up regularly. Listen, you find out pretty quickly they're not that fast when they're about 6 feet up in the air on a lift. So just something to consider. Now then, let's see. Red Dog's asking, will a larger throttle body help as a standalone? Not really. Not really, because, okay, so it depends on what we're talking about. If we're talking about a Hellcat, no. In fact, I proved that one night with this car and with my buddy Nate's Red Eye, which was a pulleyed Red Eye. We tried a larger throttle body. It did a little bit on that car and did nothing for my car whatsoever. Regardless of what the number might have shown up on a dyno, the real world, the reality of the real world, my car didn't run any quicker. Now, that being said, in naturally aspirated land, though, things can be a little bit different. The Fastman 84 millimeter throttle body on a 392 is a really solid upgrade, in my opinion. I mean, always would see 6 to 8 horsepower with that mod, no matter if the manifold was ported or not. Usually between 5 and 7, but you'd see a little bit more here and there. But you've got to make sure you install it. You've got to be diligent to make sure that you're lining that thing up just right. You can't just pop it on there and screw it in. You got to make sure there's no lip and all of that. So, you know, that's just kind of where it's at for me. If you are real persnickety with how you install stuff, then it'll make sense to go ahead and do the mod. But I just wouldn't I wouldn't buy it expecting anything. You're not going to notice the difference necessarily. Snow's asking, why didn't they turn on the time board to see a legit 890 when the Demon 170 was revealed? Oh, because it didn't run an 890 at all. In fact, they were running that car at 23 or 2,700 feet density altitude. That car would have done well to run a 940 in those conditions. So, no, and they wouldn't have been able to turn that. If they put the lights on, that's about what that car would run. And that was not a clean pass anyway. So that might have been more like a 950 pass. Still fast, to be certain. So I was asking, why don't you search for a stock normal Demon that's at most 120 grand to replace my Hellcat? Why would I want to do that? My car is faster than a Demon on 93 octane, and I don't really see the benefit of chasing a Demon when I've got a car that is an early release 2015. Although I will say this, the Demon is still the happiest car ever to drive. Just a regular Demon, not the 170, is still, and this also applies to any 309 geared Red Eye. They are the happiest, funnest car that you could, just playful cars to drive. So if for no other reason, I mean, you get a little bit more punch down low with those cars, and they're such a fun car to drive. Not that that one's not. That one's a hoot too, but just saying. Cibella's asking, still recommend Pike's Performance for a cam install and a tune on a 19392? Yes, because you'll be getting one of my cams if you go to Pike's Performance. Can say max power often means minimum traction. Ain't that the truth? Snow's asking, do I think Demon 170 will do great in roll races? Define do great. We were talking about going up against stock cars. Yeah, sure. But I mean, find me a roll race that's chock full of stock cars. I mean, you're just not going to find that. You roll that thing up against a twin turbo Mustang like Racer X's car. I mean, it's going to get murdered. Like it won't even be close. And I know this because we built Excessive. We built Racer X's Charger. And I've got a lot of seat time in that car. And I can assure you that as fast and as strong as that car was, his Mustang will up and walk out of that car's life on the big end, especially when speeds get above about 130. The Charger will cover that Mustang to 130 miles an hour. At 130 miles an hour, it's like that Mustang has got another engine that it turns on. I'm telling you. I mean, it was just now I've never driven his Mustang, but I've got a lot of seat time with that Charger. And I know the twin turbo game with the Mustangs real well. And I know that game well enough to know that at 1,000 horsepower, which is what that car had about at the flywheel, and because of the type of supercharging that it is, it wouldn't do well. Now, I will say this, though. One thing that is in the Demon 170's favor is that IHI 3.0 supercharger. It's got a low inertial loss, which is to say the weight of the rotors is lower than a 2.7 liter, like in the old Demon and in the Red Eye. So it's got a lower inertial load and it's more efficient. So there might be a gain there of maybe like 3 to 4%, which is a legit number. I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot. Let's say I give you 3%, but it's 3% on 800 horsepower. That's 24 horsepower. So, there's some efficiency there, but it's not going to make up for what the turbos are going to do with that Coyote. So I'm saying, sorry, I was away from the computer. Oh, got a cat and kitten problem. Understand. Meadow X is asking, aside from your new truck, am I going to get another truck for the track? Probably not. Which is somewhat unfortunate, but no, I'm going to be focusing on some other things. I really like Stormy too. That truck has turned into a really fun truck. Really nice truck too, but she does need a bath. John's asking, on a 15 RT that I just want to keep as a daily to head to work and collector's firearms, good place to be. What modifications would add some oomph without pushing the reliability of the car? You know what? Here's what I would do. Something cool, fun that you can play with. Get you a pedal commander, which could also be a pedal box. Anything that is a signal intercept for your throttle. Get that first. That'll give you more punch underfoot. I have been recommending pedal commanders for these cars. I used to install them on Mercedes, BMWs. I've installed them on Range Rovers. We've installed them on everything under the sun, and Hellcats, everything. And all it is a signal intercept. That's it. But what it allows you to do is you can tune in how sensitive the throttle is underfoot. Do that first, and then if you want other modifications, you can, let's see, what year was your car? 15 RT. There's really nothing else. I can't really say that you would be happy with any other modifications. You could go exhaust, but you're going to have to get it tuned to do all of that. So I would honestly stick with the pedal commander for now. Don't spend a lot. You don't have to spend a lot of money. Go that route and check back in. If you're still not happy, maybe look at, check and see what rear gear is in the car. You are working with a 15, so you got an 8-speed automatic. You could always go, if it's got a 262 non-limited slip, you could go with the 309 with the limited slip diff. That would be another great way to go. And you don't have to tune for that either. You got wheel speed sensors that'll pick up speed on that, so you don't have to worry about any of that as well. So those would be the two things I would look at as options. And then just have fun with the car with that. Anything else is going to start costing way too much money, and I think you're going to end up not, for what you're going to be using the car for, you're not going to be able to enjoy the extra that you get with it. So those two mods, and I'd let her ride. So I was asking, what about a stock C7 ZR1 versus a Demon 170? You're talking what, 750 horse versus 900? I don't think the ZR1 would be able to collect mile per hour on the big end enough to go around a Demon 170. SRT's asking, howdy B, would you trade the Cat for a jailbreak Charger if the opportunity presented itself? Negative. Nope. Because I like having a 2015. I like having one of the early, it's a very, very early car too. Oh, John saying I have a Borla and a 309 open diff as it is now, then I would definitely go with the pedal commander. And exhaust is a little bit of a subjective thing. I used to suggest, like, I run Borla S-Type with my truck. Any of the MagnaFlow kits are good too. Some guys just really don't like the extra noise. So, that's something subjective. It doesn't really add power, but, well, with yours being a 15, it might. With the later cars, it really doesn't, because they're all running the Scat Pack style exhaust. Snow's asking, I saw a video of a stock new Camaro ZL1 versus a stock 717 horse Hellcat wide body race from a dig in Camaro 1. Is that legit? Or was the Hellcat driver not that good? No, the Hellcat driver just sucked. Or the conditions sucked, or something else was going on. So I'll put it to you like this. Back in the day, and this kind of sucks because we would have, you would see the ZL1 guys show up, and a lot of them were, now it depends on what was done to the ZL1 too, but a stock ZL1 is not always a 10-second car. A stock Hellcat, like, let's say we're talking really clean air and you're on a drag strip. Both cars are on a drag pack wheel and tire setup. The Hellcat is going to run like a 1080, at least a 1090, if nothing else. The ZL1, both of them being automatics, from what we would see regularly at the track, would be like an 11-1 car. They're always about a tenth or 2/10 slower than the Hellcat consistently. So to get outside of that window, it just means that whoever's driving the Hellcat, they didn't have the conditions. In other words, they weren't on a drag strip. And, the guy might have just sucked at driving, and the guy in the Camaro might have been better, just a flat out better driver, which is what it sounds like to me. Oh, John, you've already got the limited slip? Then yeah, then you've already got everything you need. John's saying, took her to Maine last year and this year heading to LA. I like it. I love my Borla. Golly, that exhaust sounds good, man. Oh my goodness. Let's see. So it's asking you, I think the Scat Pack is a beast for what it is. Somebody just piped it up out front. For what like a stock car, it's a beast, period, dude. It's an 11-second car. Listen, a Scat Pack. Understand this. Scat Packs are legit mid 11-second cars if you do just a little tiny bit of race prep to them. In other words, pull the front seat, put a drag pack on it, a third of a tank of gas, and go to a drag strip. In cold air, it's going to run an 1150 or an 1160. And at worst, with the newer cars, they're going to run 1170. The older cars were 1190 cars, all right? Back in the day, when I was early on with this, kind of a pioneer with these cars, if you will, I had an SRT, the heaviest of the group, and at full weight, we were running 1130s at full weight with 20-inch wheels and a full tank of gas. Okay, I mean, when I say full weight, we're talking legit full weight here, and that's with a stock cam and stock manifolds at that. So. Yeah, they're freaking fast. And the thing is to say for what it is, they're awesome cars. I mean, it's basically big block displacement in a big car. They do they're really fun to drive. And I'll take that a step further. At that time, I didn't lose, and I will say one Mustang, because I maybe had more done to that car than I thought, but mod for mod, I never got beat in that car. So, yeah, in fact, I used to go sniping after Hellcats. So, anyway, that's just kind of where it's at. They're great cars. Ken's asking, does a Dark Horse pique your interest from new material for the channel? I've thought about that. Here's the thing. First of all, my wife will not catch herself dead in a Mustang. But that being said, I've thought about it. And here's the thing. I don't know what new content I can realistically bring you guys. I mean, it would just be Coyote content. I'd go to the track 1 or 2 times with it, and there wouldn't be a whole lot left to do. Long tubes, a tune, throttle bodies if you think that you need them, because there's 2 of them now on the Dark Horse, or even on the GTs. There's going to be a Brazilian of those cars hitting the web, and by the time I would be able to get my hands on one, I think they'd be fairly well played out. The S650's already hit the dyno. It's putting down identical numbers in terms of horsepower. Obviously, it's off on torque, but it's putting down identical numbers to the 392 to the rear wheels, and the Dark Horse is going to cover that by about another 15 or 20 horsepower. So depending on which dyno flavor you like, just take whatever your Scat Pack put down, and that's what the S650 puts down, and the Dark Horse just eclipses that a little bit more. The thing with the new car is that there's so much that they did that is not powertrain related. There's suspension geometry that's at play here. There's the interior stuff that's at play here. I love the fact you can put Fox gauges as an option. And for me, I'm a sucker for stuff like that. So, yeah, I don't know that there's I don't know realistically, without doing a ton of mods to one of those cars, I don't know that there's an audience for one that's just doing stock stuff. I will say the other cool thing is that they did, and it took them long enough to do this, and I think this is actually where the power is coming from. They redesigned the driver's side? No, the passenger side header to where it doesn't look like a jungle gym anymore. It's an actual legit header, and I think that's where they picked up the power, by the way. But anyway, beside the point, I just don't know that there's enough interest in it long term. I will say this. I don't know what is to come with Mopar. I would like to maybe hold out and see if Dodge does something cool with the inline 6 that is more me, that is more my style, that is more my my styling, if you will. Things that I like, the angular, the door wedge type stuff, the Conquest, the Stealth's a little roundy, but but the Stealth or the old 300Z type styling. something like the Daytona, the old school, the Daytona or the Spirit, for example, that kind of edgy Dodge look. I like a lot of that, and they've got to do something cool with the Hurricane, though. I would probably be on board with that. The only downside to that is you're asking me to give that up for that car, that inline six. So it would be a good business decision to go that route if Dodge decides to make that engine available in a car that you would actually want to buy. And here's the twist on that. If they put that engine in the Banshee, they're going to have to do something with the styling of that Banshee, because that car from a 3/4 ass view looks like somebody quit about halfway through the design process. I don't know what it is about that car, and I'm not the only one that said it. There's been quite a few folks that have voiced the same opinion that I had, where it just doesn't look like it's finished yet. And we were supposed to have that car, like, it's September, guys. I mean, what is it? We're coming up the first week of September. We were supposed to have that car as like a production model by now, right? I mean, we were told 2024. That was the goal anyway. And now it's looking like it's a 25 model year. And a lot of us are going, okay, but do we get anything for 24? Or is it just going to be doldrums here? Like nothing. I mean, we don't know. That's the problem. As Mopar enthusiasts, there's not a whole lot to talk about. Dodge isn't giving us anything to talk about. And again, the latest thing that they did was to, release some, soap, like Bed Bath and Beyond crap for your car from Jay Leno's Garage. No disrespect to Jay, but damn, I'm expecting something a little bit more racy than, some Slickum and, some Bubbles. When's the last time you went to your direct connection provider for car wash stuff? You don't. You order that crap off of Amazon. You go to the AutoZone or your local, your Pep Boys or whatever you got in your neck of the woods. Everybody's got their own regional store profile. It doesn't matter. You don't go there, though. It just seems like it was a weird, cringy, what the fuck? You could have spent that amount of time. Like, hey, yeah, we got Jay Leno here. He's one of the first people to get a 170. Has he taken it to the drag strip yet? As that car hit the dyno, people go, Jay Leno's a car guy. Is he really? Is he, or does he just like collecting things? So here's where I'm at with that. Jay Leno has not taken that thing to the quarter mile that I'm aware of. Jay Leno has not taken that car to a dyno that I'm aware of. He hasn't done car guy things with the car that the guy got. So, people, the ultimate car guy, the horse shit that you hear out of these people. Great, he employs a small army to work on his toys. Lovely. I mean, we would all do it if we could, right? I mean, I'm not knocking the guy, but this is a reality that we're living in with this. And so, it's not, these cars are already not going to car guys, hardcore car guys. Leave all the speculation alone, unless because he got the car and because he's a partner with Dodge, he had to sign an NDA or at least something along those lines. That's a non-disclosure act, by the way. Had to sign some type of an NDA. If he did put it on a dyno, don't tell anybody. If he did take it to the drag strip, don't show the results of what this thing ran, because it didn't run an 890 anything. I can assure you of that. So this is where you get to looking at it and you're like, well, do I fault Jay or do I fault Dodge? I'm not talking about doing something positive here. Faulting is not positive when we're talking about it in this respect. And so for me, we're talking about the 170 like it's special. Some of the technology is cool, but I mean, when you start to look at it from a bit more of a subjective point of view, you see the fact that Jay's not doing anything with the car. You either go, okay, well, then he's just part of a privileged class of few people that got their hands on this thing. Was it part, this is another thing. Was that car part of the negotiation for him to come on board with Jay Leno's garage with Dodge? You can bet your ass it wasn't Jay Leno ringing up old Timmy and going, hey, Timmy, I want to sell soap through direct connection. Jay Leno would never do that. I promise you it was Dodge going, let's sit around. Who's a car guy? Well, the ultimate car guy is Jay Leno. Let's get him on board. I bet if we offer him a Demon 170, he'll come on board. Could you imagine Jay Leno got that damn thing for free? Realistically, come on now. Meanwhile, you have record-setting Dodge owners that can't get their hands on these things. Okay. Thank you, Sovereign. Snow's asking, why didn't they make at least 1,000 more Demon 170s? They might not be able to make the cars that they have already said that they were going to make, that they've committed to. So we'll see about that. Sovereign said, if I had to pick from RT, Scat Pack, and Hellcat, I'd pick the Scat. It's raw power with no boost, and it's practical power to play with, which is true. You can use all of it. Now, all you got to do is just reach over and press a little 500 horse mode on the Hellcat. And it is a legit 500, by the way. But it limits that platform to 5 pounds of boost. Modern Red has a long record of record setting in the 570 does. So of the folks that have come on the channel, you've got me, who's the stock boost 93 octane record holder, but Jim Mopar could beat me at any given time if all he needs is the right DA. So between him and myself, he's in Canada, I'm in the States. And the thing that sucks is that there's no way he and I could ever meet in the middle, because I am at the bottom of the United States, not at the top. But anyway, the fact of the matter is that you've got me, no average RT. You've had Demonology, who actually owns stock cam Demon record on accident. But you've got, let's see, who else? Orange Crush. That car recently sold, and unfortunately it has been ragged out too. That car, full weight, 93 octane stock boost. I think that did cover the record. So got quite a few, at least that we know of, that have run and have set some significant, some real obscure records for sure, though. Snow said, I'm going to get a Scat Pack in January. I've only had an SXT for 6 years. Should I be scared because I've never driven a very powerful car before? Nope. It's only as scary as your right foot. Sovereign's asking, B, does the 392 relate more to an old school 440 or an old school 426? It's got the best of both, without the worst of both. So 440s were known for making a ton of power down low, but they do fizzle out at about 4,500 RPM, give or take. Hemis were dogs. And this is something funny too. Hemi, yes, on a drag strip in race form, they do great. On the street, they were horrific. So people go, yeah, but they were expensive and that's why they didn't sell. No, they weren't. There's an $800 option, which translates to today to an $8,000 option over a 440. They're not that, they weren't more expensive, not the way you think. But they were a pain in the ass. They didn't start well in cold weather. And on top of that, they were dogs unless you had your foot broken off in them. Ask me how I know. I've driven them before and I've dynoed them, and they didn't quite put down the power that was advertised either. Just fun fact. But again, in race mode, when you had enough compression and the right camshaft in them, yeah, they would scream. They'd make 650, 675 horse just fine. The same way that every engine with really good heads at 400 plus cubes makes 600 horsepower. So no surprise there. But the reality is that the 392, you get all the torque down low of a 440, and it carries power better than the Hemis on the big end. In fact, the heads that are on your 5.7 and on your Scat Pack flow more than the heads that were on the street Hemis back in the day. So just so you know, and a long time ago, I even put a video out that was outlining that, saying, listen, you know, as far as what is the best engine Dodge has ever made, it's the 392. Red Dog is saying, thanks. Marco is in. What's up, man? Marco, regular cab still down and never again on boost. I understand. So we're saying it's a little chunky for a B body. Needs a bit more slim down. All of them do. Motor saying, buddy just got a 23 Challenger with Pentastar motor yesterday. Salesman told him it's faster than a Scat Pack. In what way? It depreciates faster. Sovereign saying, Moto X, that salesman is smoking crack. Indeed. Moto X, Fox in regret. The salesman said Scat Pack would lose for breaking loose. No, it would not. 305 versus 45. Yeah, no. That's somebody who's never driven an automobile before, I believe. Yeah, they're nowhere close. George asks, can you help me with tips on some modifications for my 6.1 Hemi? Sure. Depends on what you want to do with it, but starting off, pedal commander and a tune will get you well underway. You've got good shorty manifolds on it. Your catback's pretty strong in terms of flow, so you're not going to see any power gains there. A tune's really going to be where you're at if you want to pick up some gains throughout the mid-range and maybe a little bit up top. But aside from that, I wouldn't look to pick up a whole lot of power unless you decide to go boost or cam with it. So that should really come as no surprise. I will tell you that with the 6.1s, the nice ones are becoming more and more scarce. So if you've got, by anyone's estimation, a really clean version of a 6.1, limit the mods to the more tasteful variety. That thing will maintain and hold its value. In fact, what I've seen, the value of those cars is going up. So, but those are some things that I would do if I had one myself. In fact, I've got a running crush on an SRT8. This person works at a nursing home. I pass this place all the time. I don't know what they do there, but they have got one of the cleanest black and silver stripe cars I've ever seen. And that is actually the car that got me really back into looking at Mopars seriously. So, there's that. I wouldn't go spending money on long tubes or anything like that. Just really not necessary. Not at the power level that you're at. Now, again, if you really want to start dialing up the power, that's where things get completely different. You want to go camshaft boost, things like that. You can. I would probably say if it's in the budget, and if it's not, save up a little bit longer until it is. Go boost first. And then if you like the boost, then you can always go cam afterwards. Limit the boost to around 7 pounds of boost, just because you want to protect yourself from bad fuel quality. Get it tuned by somebody who speaks very fluent Mopar, and you'll be in good shape. SRT Hellcat. The 426 puts out about 4.25 horse, which isn't too far off from the 392. It doesn't put out that. In fact, the cars that I dynoed back in the day, even the 4-speed cars, a healthy version of one of those 426s would put down about 360, 370 to the rear wheels. And that's on a 248 dyno jet. That's one of the first gigs I ever had working with cars was I was a dyno operator. New guys that had these cars. To us, they were neat, but they weren't like the nasty ones were the built wedge cars. Those were the ones you really had to watch out for. A lot of the Hemi guys didn't do a lot with the Hemis either because, number one, they're expensive if you break them. It has nothing to do with the bottom end of it. It's mainly if you jacked up something with one of the heads. But normally those guys were more posing than anything else. The wedge guys were the ones you had to watch out for. All of those guys were running, just some pretty sick stuff back in the day. Max wedge stuff was not uncommon, but that's really where the nasty stuff. That's where you find the 650, 660 horse at the flywheel. The max wedge cars were always spookier than the Hemi cars. But that's just because that's how they were building them down here. So, but I've driven a few of the Hemi cars and a few of the max wedge cars and a few of the 440 cars and a couple of the 383 cars. All of them were fun to drive. But anyway, George, hope that helps you out, man. Just stick with the mild stuff unless you really want to go nuts. But I do like the pedal commander because it puts you in control of the driving experience. And again, when they first came out, a lot of folks were like, oh, they're gimmicky. But again, I was installing them on Mercedes, BMWs, Range Rovers, stuff like that. Friends of mine that just wanted the cars to be more peppy. And the second I started playing with them, I loved them because you can have them more aggressive, or you can even dial them back and have the car basically in chill mode. And it doesn't hurt anything. It's absolutely, it's benign. It has absolutely no effect. So that's what I would do. In fact, that's one of the things that I've told guys to do in terms of mods to Hellcats. 309 gear and a pedal commander, and then leave everything else. Don't touch anything else. You'll be just fine. Sovereignty. Yeah, no, that Pentastar car would have no hope. Sovereign. Oh yeah, the 440 is not a Hemi. I mean, you could make a 426 a 440, but no, it's not a Hemi. In fact, you could argue that the 426 really did need another 30 or 40 cubic inches to be really a good street engine. But then you'd run into cooling problems, right? So it's never a free lunch with the old school stuff. It never is. And you give up something somewhere to get wherever you're wanting to be. Believe me when I tell you that. Arfo Scat driver, I'd be dead. Moto X said he's got a buddy with a 70 Challenger with a 426. He doesn't ever drive it. Nobody ever does. And the funny thing is there were back in like the shit, man, don't give me the line. It was like the late 90s, early 2000s. You might be able to still get them. I haven't even looked them up, to be honest with you. It's been forever ago since I've even thought about 426 Hemis, but they did a re-release of that engine. And guys were going, oh my God, it's a Hemi. And then people were buying them and installing them and doing repowers, going, they'll buy like a 74 Challenger, convert it to 1970 bodywork and drop a Hemi in it. And it's a 426. But then they drive it and it's just, that's it. So, I mean, they're great. Don't get me wrong. I'm not shitting on the old school stuff. I've been accused of that a few times. I'm not shitting on it. What happens when you're just telling the truth? You know what I mean? Like that's part of the issue, is that when a lot of times people get butthurt over the truth. They don't want to believe it. And it really happens to happen with Mopar guys more than anything else. Chevrolet guys are not like this, and Ford guys rely a little bit on legend, but they really know, I mean, they know where the bread's buttered when it comes to like a 428 CJ or something like that. It's a freaking Thunderbird motor. It's marketing. And they knew that. They knew what they were getting into. But Dodge guys, man, I swear to you, there's the old school Dodge guys are just, the dogma runs deep with some of those guys. And people would ask me a question, say, well, this is my experience with them because I was working with guys that were running nothing but old school Mopars, and I've driven them, I've dynoed them, I know what they're all about. And it's okay. I mean, there's a 600. It's funny how the legend of the Hemi just keeps growing and growing and growing. It's how religions get started, right? Like, the Hemi is, keep in mind how old the Hemi engine is, right? I mean, look, the Hemi got its start in the late 50s. You can see right there, just the very end, that's a 57 Dodge advertisement. Dodge or DeSoto. Anyway, it doesn't matter. That's where the Hemi got its start. It's an old ass engine design as far as cars go. And they were used as industrial engines. This is the funny thing. People don't ever, it's very selective. Facts, and people only hear what they want to hear. It's like confirmation bias, right? So the funny thing about the Hemi is that back in the day, and there were smaller engines, so you get them like 250 cubic inches. They really didn't start getting big until later, but yeah, they made good power, but they were hemispherical design because a Hemi engine design, and by the way, the Hemi cylinder head goes back well over 100 years. The Hall Scott engines. Okay, I'm just going to nerd out. Okay, for you guys that don't know, I was a docent at the Hiller Aircraft Museum, engine specialist, and I can explain why this stuff is what it is, which is a real problem if you don't like facts. So back in the day, you used Hemi engines, and the Hemi engine. It was a weird thing. Like if you can imagine, this coffee cup is your cylinder. You had gear-driven overhead cam, and because it's the simplest way to do it, the valves were in the actual cylinder, and there wasn't a cylinder head. The cylinder screwed into a crankcase. They used a Hemi cylinder, or they used a Hemi combustion chamber because one, it was kind of easy to make. Two, they're extremely volumetrically efficient, meaning you can move a lot of air, and you need to be able to move a lot of air because you had these engines that were extremely under square. You had very small bores, very long strokes, and you're trying to get as much air into this thing and compress it at low compression. So you needed to get as much air in there as you could. You're at low RPM. You're not trying to, there is no high compression. There's no fuel that would work with it. That's where all this stuff came from. It was just a simple matter of dumb, basically Kentucky windage. When you go, how do I get the biggest valve into this area? Well, if it's round, okay, let's put some valves in there that are coming like 45 degree angle. Okay, cool, send it. That's it. That's where so fast forward, you start putting some logic to that. You put a supercharger on it. Well, now you're really in good shape. You put a supercharger on a Hemi, very high volumetric efficiency. You need that if you've got a supercharger. So now you've got this thing that you don't have to run a lot of boost and it makes more power. Well, fast forward to the automotive thing. The Hemi thing worked great with airplane engines and boat engines and tank engines and things that needed to make a lot of power on crap fuel. And they figured, well, we can do that too with cars. I'm paraphrasing and I'm giving you very much the cliff notes. But to get to my point, the Hemi design is only a high performance design in a high performance, and I mean a high performance, competitive, war emergency kind of a power necessity type of a thing. Outside of that, you need quench area to build up compression. You need to not have a piston that's shaped like my head. Okay, a piston that's shaped like my head, you got air coming in one side, it's got to go around the baldness and then out the other side, because Hemis you've got intake on one side, exhaust on the other, right? They're not like this, they're like that. Like wedge is this way, Hemis like this, intake manifolds here, headers over here. That air, if it's got to go around this head, that just is more volume that it's got to deal with, and it makes it a pain in the ass. And so the basics of this are, the Hemi does great when you need to make something with a lot of compression, make a lot of power under boost. But the reality is that unless you spin that engine really high when it doesn't have boost, it's never going to make the kind of power that a wedge head will make, because a wedge head, although it's not as thermodynamically as efficient, combustion chamber design-ish for combustion chamber design. There's arguments that can be made here, but just, you know where I'm going with this. A wedge, because of its flat combustion chamber by comparison anyway, is going to be more thermodynamically efficient, which means that it can take whatever force you use to make compression, it will make more power out of that. So that's just some realities of engine design. I don't even know where I'm going with this. As per normal, I got sidetracked, went off on something, started talking about something else. Anyway, Snow is saying, welcome to the channel, by the way, where you will get your ears, a history lesson crammed into your ears. Snow's asking, when I get my Scat Pack, do I leave traction control on or off? Leave it on. But it's saying, gentlemen, it makes you all feel better. I challenge the race after he breaks it in. I like it. Sovereign's liking the Vanishing Point Challenger for sure. By the way, all the cool movie cars that were Dodge were all wedge cars. None of them were Hemis. I know that in the remake of Vanishing Point that they used, they had Hemi badges or whatever. The reality is that all of the really cool, Dirty Harry, Crazy Larry, whatever it was, the Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry, you had Vanishing Point, the Charger from Bullet, all of those cars were wedge cars. Itch is asking, any truth to Durango Hellcat again for 24? As far as I know, yep. As far as I appreciates faster for sure. Let's see. Thank you, Clark. Snow's saying, is Mopar language American English or is Mopar another language? It is shorthand for motor parts. Marco's asking, do I like the 6.4 better than the 5.7? I like them both, but if given the opportunity, I'd rather have the 6.4. 5.7 is a great engine. George saying, thank you, my brother. George saying, I actually wanted to put a cam in his 6.1. Someone also recommended me to get long tube headers. If you get a cam, you have to go with long tubes. And that's going to be part of the scavenging effect, but it depends. See, the problem with to recommend a cam, there's so much more that goes into it, and since there's really no such thing as stage kits, because everybody's a little bit different, when I put a cam together, I put a cam together specifically for the application. So, but that's a lot of that has to do with the subjective nature of people. Some people like some chop, some people don't. Some people are willing to live with drivability issues, other people aren't. And some people get sick and tired of things that they're all hot and ready to rock and roll with quicker than others. It just all depends on where you're coming from and what type of experience you're looking to have. But the bottom line is that, you're coming to a cam from a pretty good place. But if you want to go off of like what would be my recommendation colloquially, anyway, I don't even, as people would talk about them, a stage 2 is as deep into a 6.1 as I would ever go, mainly because of the weight of the car and the drivability issues that you can have outside of that will just absolutely make you insane if the car is an automatic. Now, that being said, those cars do have a little bit looser converter from the factory, but still, don't overburden yourself with trying to overthink it. Stage 2-ish type cam and long tube headers. Find you somebody that speaks fluent Mopar that will tune it for you, and you're off to the races. You'll love it. So I was asking, are Coyote engines better than Hemis? From a technological point of view, yes. And actually, the Coyote, because it's a 4-valve Pentastar design, is in a way more Hemi than your Hemi is, especially if you look at like Project 904, which was it Project 904? Anyway, which was the 4-valve Hemi that Dodge was in the process of developing. They called that a Hemi. Yep, technology does progress. I'll follow Hemi faith. There was no Trans Am to match up with the ZL1, at least not for not for the modern era. Old school stuff would have been like let's see, it would be any of the 400. Oh crap, it just escaped my brain. So you got the Super Duty 455, which was a really cool, hairy engine, but you couldn't spin it very high because it had large main journals. Great for load handling though. But the 400 stage 4 would have been the way that I would have gone, and that would have been up against anything from that era. And even then, you get into the Camaro would still be faster with an L88. But my St. Mary's College alum pal Kim drove a 66 Cuda in high school. Her family owned Walnut Creek Dodge. Dodge gave her dad a free, oh nice, free car every 6 months. Very cool. Sovereign's nerd out. They were saying, hey, professor, what's up? Imagine a free Chrysler every 6 months. That'd be cool. So I was asking, let's say I see an abandoned 1970 Challenger in the middle of nowhere and I want it. Can I get it without getting in trouble? And how do I register it if it wasn't mine and no owner around? You don't. What do I say? Take VIN to DMV. You could. You're going to need a bill of sale. There's going to be a lot of things that you would need. But if you're taking something that doesn't belong to you, you're a thief and you deserve what's coming to you. So I was saying, Professor B, Education 101 on the Hemi, for sure. Go, man, go. Christine was a Hemi. No, Christine was a Golden Commando 350, which was the first big block offered in what was then the 58 Belvedere, which was the original regular block, not raised block, which would end up being the 350, which went to the 361, which then capped out at the 363. Well, technically it capped out at 400, but for performance stuff, you would think of the 363, and then the raised block would then evolve into the 440, or rather the 413, the 426, the 440, and the 426 Hemi. So that's the breakdown of that. But it was a dual quad, 350 cubic inch, big block, was the engine that was in Christine. From the movie anyway. And fun fact, Christine in the book is a 4-door, not a 2-door. Moto X, Hollywood's Phantasm Cuda. Oh, Max asking about the Scat packages. Yes, you could get Scat packages from Dodge. Arrington was the company that had put that cam together for the 5.7s, and it would bring it up to, I think, 430 horse, 4.25, something like that horse for your 5.7. Yeah, Ken, Ram Air 4. Yeah, I kind of lost my brain there for a second. Go, man, go. Phantasm Hemi Cuda. Yeah. So yeah, there was some, let's see, what other, I'm trying to think. I mean, there's all kinds of, so Dodge was always, the kind of the go-to for some of the, the cool guy car was always a Dodge. It just kind of worked out that way. It might've been marketing, might've been product placement, but it always worked out like that. So I'm saying 430 out of a 5.7, amazing. Well, we're running 400 out of the truck motors from the factory, and that's with the crappy manifolds that we've got. They can't be that bad. I mean, it's not like they're not good. I mean, there's probably 25 foot-pounds of torque in long tubes just waiting to be uncracked on those trucks. And the exhaust system on the trucks, by the way, is really good in terms of flow, even with the stock stuff. But guys, with that, listen, we are hanging on an hour and a half. I got to wrap it up because I got to wake up crazy early. So, guys, listen, get out there and do something cool for somebody. Chances are they need it way more than you know. I will catch you guys on the next one. I want to thank each and every one of y'all for being on here. Would not do this without you. Love each and every one of y'all. And again, with that, that is a wrap tonight. Y'all have a great one. Thanks for coming. Adios.